Hey guys, welcome to Wednesday. So, this is my scholarly look, sort of, not really. So the topic for this week is story time. So we're supposed to be reading a book, presumably not a novel because that would be just silly and you could read it for yourself. So the book that I picked is this one. And as you can see, it's kind of a long book, but it's a picture book, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's broken down into chapters. So I'm just going to read the first little section. It shouldn't take very long. It's going to be a very short video, I promise. But it should be cute, and the story is very profound, and we could all use a little bit of profoundness. Here we go. Persepolis, the story of a childhood, by Marjane Satrapi. I'm going to read the introduction just to give us a little bit of context. In the second millennium BC, while the Elam nation was developing a civilization alongside Babylon, Indo-European invaders gave their name to the immense Iranian plateau where they settled. The word Iran was derived from Ariana Viejo, which means the origin of the Aryans. These people were semi-nomads whose descendants were the Medes and the Persians. The Medes found the first Iranian nation in the 7th century BC. It was later destroyed by Cyrus the Great. He established what became one of the largest empires of the ancient world, the Persian Empire, in the 6th century BC. Iran was referred to as Persia, the Greek name, until 1935 when Reza Shah, the father of the last Shah of Iran, asked everyone to call the country Iran. Iran was rich. Because of its wealth and its geographic location, it invited attacks from Alexander the Great, from its Arab neighbors to the west, from Turkish and Mongolian conquerors. Iran was often subject to foreign domination. Yet the Persian language and culture withstood these invasions. The invaders assimilated into this strong culture and in some ways became Iranians themselves. In the 20th century, Iran entered a new phase. Reza Shah decided to modernize and westernize the country. But meanwhile, a fresh source of wealth was discovered. Dun dun dun, oil. And with the oil came another invasion. The West, particularly Great Britain, wielded a strong influence on the Iranian economy. During the Second World War, the British, Soviets, and Americans asked Reza Shah to ally himself with them against Germany. But Reza Shah, who sympathized with the Germans, declared Iran a neutral zone, so the Allies invaded and occupied Iran. Reza Shah was sent into exile and was succeeded by his son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who is simply known as the Shah. In 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh, then Prime Minister of Iran, nationalized the oil industry. In retaliation, Great Britain organized an embargo on all sorts of exports from Iran. In 1953, the CIA, with the help of British intelligence, organized a coup against him. Mossadegh was overthrown and the Shah, who had earlier escaped from the country, returned to power. The Shah stayed on the throne until 1979 when he fled Iran to escape the Islamic Revolution. Since then, this old and great civilization has been discussed mostly in connection with fundamentalism, fanaticism, and terrorism. As an Iranian who has lived more than half my life in Iran, I know that this image is far from the truth. This is why writing Persepolis was so important to me. I believe that an entire nation should not be judged by the wrongdoings of a few extremists. I also don't want those Iranians who lost their lives in prisons defending freedom, who died in the war against Iraq, who suffered under various repressive regimes, or who were forced to leave their families and flee their homeland to be forgotten. One can forgive, but one should never forget. And that was written by Marjane Satrapi in Paris in September of 2002, which led to this book. So the first section discusses her very early childhood, and that's what I'm going to read. So this is what the pictures look like. So the first section, as you can see, is called The Veil. This is me when I was 10 years old. This was in 1980. In my class photo, I'm sitting on the far left so you don't see me. In 1979, a revolution took place. It was later called the Islamic Revolution. Then came 1980, the year it became obligatory to wear the veil at school. We didn't really like to wear the veil, especially since we didn't understand why we had to. And because the year before, in 1979, we were in a French non-religious school, where boys and girls were all together. And then suddenly in 1980, all bilingual schools would be closed down because they were considered symbols of capitalism, of decadence. This was called a cultural revolution. We found ourselves veiled and separated from our friends. And that was that. Everywhere in the streets there were demonstrations for and against the veil. At one of the demonstrations, a German journalist took a photo of my mother. I was really proud of her. Her photo was published in all the European newspapers, and even in one magazine in Iran. But my mother was really scared. She dyed her hair. She wore dark glasses for a long time. I really don't know what to think about the veil. Deep down, I was very religious, but as a family, we were very modern and avant-garde. I was born with religion. At the age of 6, I was already sure I was the last prophet. This was a few years before the revolution. Before me, there had been a few others. But I really wanted to be a prophet because my father had a Cadillac, and above all, because my grandmother's knees always ached. Like all my predecessors, I had my holy book. The first 3 rules came from Zarathustra. He was the first prophet in my country before the Arab Revolution. I also wanted us to celebrate the traditional Zarathustrian holidays, like the fire ceremony. Before the Persian New Year, Nowruz on March 21st, the day of spring, or the first day of spring. Only my grandmother knew about my book. Every night I had a big discussion with God. My parents were called in by the teacher. Except for my grandmother, I was obviously the only one who believed in myself. And nonetheless, my parents were puzzled. I felt guilty towards God. I wanted to be justice, love, and the wrath of God all in one. And that's the end of the first section. So that's kind of how it reads, and then the pictures are all of this girl living in Iran. And it goes on to tell the rest of her life story, which is really interesting. It gets very interesting. In the inside flap of the book, it's considered her memoir of growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. It's a powerful black and white comic strip images. She tells the story of her life in Tehran from ages 6 to 14, years that saw the overthrow of the Shah's regime, the triumph of the Islamic Revolution, and the devastating effects of war with Iraq. It's really sad, too, because I think that she's absolutely correct that it's very unfair to label a whole group of people based on a few radicals, just as I know that a lot of feminists feel like they're being badly labeled and represented by people who they would consider extremists. I thought it was cool that she decided to do such a powerful memoir in the form of a comic strip, as opposed to just writing it out, which she, I'm sure, is perfectly capable of having done. But I think that having the images to go with it, it makes it a little bit easier to read and get through, and really gets the point across, I thought. So that was why I picked it. But yes, so that was Story Week. I hope you enjoyed that, children. And until I see you guys next Wednesday, take care and peace out.